Jane, face the front, please. Cool. I'd like a setup here that makes it really easy for our wonderful guest speaker Sophie to speak without having to raise her voice. Can you please all sit on the floor or in a chair, not on the table, please, for cultural sensitivity reasons? Okay. So guys, what happened about a month ago, I received an email from Sophie, and she offered to me to do a talk in our school about a journey with hope and living with HIV. And I thought it was the most incredible offer. Well, how lucky are we to have Sophie, who's willing to come and talk to us at Mount Rushmore Grammar School. So here's an opportunity for you to listen to an unbelievably inspiring and inspirational woman. Okay? So please enjoy listening to Sophie and asking questions when the time is right. And Sophie, please take it from here.
Thank you very much. Good morning, Mount Rushmore students. Thank you for having me here today. I think I've met a few people that made me much easier today. My name is Sophie Wooden. I came to New Zealand in 1989 with my 2 children and my husband. One of my daughter is here today. She's the cameraman at the back, and she's a support person for me, and she also works with me in our awareness organization. The reason I'm here today is not just to tell you about my story. During my life, I found something amazing, intriguing, and exciting about young people. I didn't know this when I was young. When I came to New Zealand in 1989, I lived in Gisborne. My husband was a teacher at Gisborne High School, and I was a mother at that time, looking after the kids. It was the best time of my life, my kids, because we had come from Zimbabwe. We came here for good jobs. We came here for our children to start. Education was one of the reasons we actually came to New Zealand. Also, the green stuff they talk about, it's always green in New Zealand. There's pools, there's oceans, but anywhere you go. So that was the attraction for us to come to New Zealand. When we did, we loved everything we saw in Gisborne. We loved the people, we learned the language. My children could speak Maori. We did everything that the locals did. And we're looking forward to a better life in New Zealand. In 1989, I decided to have a baby. So I was having a 3rd baby. I went to a checkup with the doctors, as mothers do normally. And I was really happy. I was glamour, had all this happy face, my skin was glowing, and I came home all pregnant. Our kiwi baby was just about to come. About 6 months later, I went for a checkup from my doctor, and he did some blood tests. So he was going to tell me the results in 2 weeks' time, whenever the time was appropriate then. When the results came, I got a phone call from my doctor telling me that I was positive. Now, positive, where I come from, which is Zimbabwe, I grew up in Rhodesia where we learn British system. So positive was always a good thing. So I put the phone down, I said, thank you, and my husband came from work. I said, I'm positive. He said, about what? I said, I don't know, the doctor told me I'm pregnant, I'm positive. So we got to, it was late, around 3:30 after I finished school. He phoned the doctor to say what's wrong with her, because my husband understands this. My husband was educated in Oxford University in Europe. So he knew about positive, except me. And he was told, your wife has got AIDS. And the AIDS is a disease that doesn't get cured. She'll be dying soon. So we got really sad, because we didn't know about AIDS. AIDS was never spoken in those days. I'm talking about 25 years ago today. Nobody talked about it. When they started talking about AIDS, it was a scary thing. Now, I was one of the first people to be diagnosed with HIV, maybe in Gisborne. But in New Zealand as a whole, nobody talked about it. So it was the most scary time for my family, because in those days when you got AIDS, you were perceived as contagious. When you touch someone, that person dies. If you look at them, they die. If you eat in their house, they die. That's how it was perceived. So we had to keep to ourselves so much. My daughter was about 3.5 years old at that age. At that time, my son was 6 years old. And telling them what was wrong with mommy was quite scared because they might go and tell the teacher, so we didn't tell them. We didn't want anyone to know except the doctors. A couple of weeks later, we had to go and see the authorities at the Gisborne Hospital. The authorities was going to tell us what we're going to do with our situation. At the hospital, people came. We're the only black people in Gisborne, so it was very important for us not to even cough the word. And AIDS was not being spoken about. People were starting to see it a little bit on the TV. In the hospital, there's all these authorities. There were about 8 people in this room because there were 6 chairs. 6 were over there, 2 were over here. That's me and my husband. And the rest of the people that was in the room were European 50-year-olds looking people. And they were really not smiling. Maybe because I didn't know many Europeans, so I don't know if they're smiling or they're serious. I just knew I was in a bad place. It felt like a judgment day. And one of the ladies who was a gynecologist said, "Do you know you've got AIDS?" And I just shrinked. And do you know what it is? And it just shrink both of us. Well, AIDS kills. You get AIDS, you get skinny, you get diarrhea, and you die within 5 years. So that was what's going to happen to us. And AIDS is contagious. Because I was pregnant, the lady made sure that I would understand the consequences of having pregnancies, of being pregnant as well. And that was no information in those days was available. So the doctors just thought, if you are with AIDS, your baby will have AIDS, so the whole country will have AIDS. So the only way to do it this time, which was, by this time I was 6 months pregnant with two babies. I was twins. So they suggested they were going to terminate the babies, and that would give me longer time to live and have longer time to look after my other babies that was there. So we sent to Australia, and in Sydney, where in Sydney there is an abortion clinic. It's for abortion only. And I got there, and I was surprised that there was as many people as in this room waiting for abortions. But I was the biggest one because I was 6 months pregnant. While I was there, I stayed with 2 gay men that looked after me. In those days, only gay people seems to have the heart to help other people. Everybody was scared. So I stayed with 2 gay men, which was my first time to know a gay person, my first time to stay in a house with 2 gay men who are a couple. It was a beautiful apartment, I never forget that. And they really looked after me, they touched me, they gave me everything. They even touched things I don't want to discuss, like girly things. They did it for me and cleaned me. And I was just shocked because black men don't do that. They don't touch women's things. So, but this was such an experience for me. But my life was just about to change. When I came back to Gisborne, I didn't like Gisborne. I didn't see the beaches. I didn't see all these families that were taking us for lunches and dinners. My children were just like the lovable children of Gisborne. But I had to change that. So now I was changing. I was becoming someone else. I didn't want anyone to know me, be my friend, come to our house. So is my children. They can't just bring people to our house in case they see a later or something. So we lived like that for a long time because there was no medicine. 5 years had gone by, which I was told I was going to die. And I'm thinking about dying for 5 years. I'm going to wake up in the morning and die. But I did it. Something happened, I didn't die. So I carried on. We moved from Gisborne 2 years after I've been diagnosed and came to Auckland so I can go to Teachers Training College. I don't know what I was thinking. Nobody liked or wanted to hear about AIDS. And I was at Auckland University with AIDS. And there was all these people that looked healthy to me. I look like this, but I thought you guys were healthy because, said you're not going to die, I'm going to die. I hated going to school. I just didn't like being in the classroom. Everything about education, which is the reason I come to New Zealand, became almost impossible. So I dropped out, started my own business as a hairdresser. I'm the person who introduced braids and dreads. You were not even born at that time, most of you guys. So my business grew really big, the braiding, the extensions, it becomes fashion in Australasia. So my secret was safe with me because everybody sees a rich woman, good-looking women. My children go to Epsom schools, we drive a flash car every year. So all that was to make sure people don't think we are those people. That's how I lived. I didn't have many friends. My children made their own friends. I'm glad they did, but I don't know how because I wasn't friendly to people's houses. 14 years later, I haven't gotten any medicine because there was no medicine. I was so alive. But I was so stressed with life. Every time I wake up in the morning, I thought my children are going to be by themselves. without a mom. I didn't see a future in me. I was scared that my children, because those days there wasn't even many black people too, if anything happens to them, who was going to look after my children? So every time I looked at my children, I get sad. But I never cried in front of my kids because I didn't want them to get sad. I'll cry in the night when they're gone and I tell them about my world. I'll cry. But I was wonderful outside. I had this mask, we call it mask now, because I had this beautiful mask and a happy mom. You know, I drive fast and I got a business, I had a lot of money. But inside I was not the normal person people were looking at. I knew, and people said, oh, she's my friend. I said, yeah, I'm not your friend. You can't be my friend when you don't know me. And I can't even tell you when I'm angry. So you're not my friend. So I did not have friends, but I had lots of people call me friends. 2001, 14 years later after I had been diagnosed, I got really sick. Everything got on top of me. I got really, really sick, and I went to Auckland Hospital. In Auckland Hospital, the doctors didn't know what was wrong with me because I didn't have the symptoms that people who are dying of AIDS dies of. Because when you've got the virus, when you are dying, you get all these infectious viruses that are called opportunistic. So that's what kills you, not the actual AIDS, not the virus. But they couldn't even relate anything that I had that relates to that. But I was really, really sick. I lived in hospital for about 4 years, and I think the third year the doctor said, we can't help you, then go to hospice. By this time my daughter was 18. In 2002, my daughter was 18, and she said, no, you are not going to hospice, we're going to look after ourselves. And she's not going there. But the saddest thing is I was still looking at my daughter. She was 18 now. She was going out. And I look at it, all the boys like it. I'm thinking, don't like boys. But I couldn't tell her why she should not like boys. My son, who is older than her, will come home, and all these little girls around him, all printed up, and I'm thinking, I want to talk about sex. But I can't, because that affected me and the whole family. That will bring a lot of shame. So I will just watch them. But every time I watch my children going out, I shrink, because I know what happened out there. And I couldn't talk to them about the virus. Because I was going to die, I decided to write a book. It was a journal, it wasn't a book, it was a journal. I was just writing to my children how we go to New Zealand, who I am back in Africa, who is their father, who grew up somewhere else with Sri Lankan, and we were quite a mixed family. So I was basically wanting them to actually know who they are, until if something happens, they can go back home, or they can call somebody, I don't know. I just want my children to know the horrible, terrible situation I was in. I wanted them to know there was a disease that actually didn't just traumatize me, was killing the world by storm. It was just, I couldn't watch television those days. You watch TV, there's all these people being chucked in the graveyard in Africa or somewhere. And I'm thinking, you know, because I know I could be one of them, but I wasn't. For some reason, I was just being looked after by someone. So my life was way better, but my inside, the emotional part of me, no, it wasn't. Because I had to make sure nobody knows who I am. I had to make sure no one knows who my children are. I had to make sure just that secret stays. And yet I was not physically sick. When I wrote my book as a journal, I get this courage that instead of just leaving the book lying around, I better just tell my children. So I brought them in the room and I told them what was killing me. I told them the stories, that what happened, how we came to New Zealand, what happened to the babies, that because they were so little, they didn't ask mom what happened to the babies. I told them all about that, and I told them why I couldn't tell them. Because any school in those days, if they found your mom has got AIDS, if they found you have got AIDS, you don't go to those schools, you get checked out. And then all your friends and all your neighbors won't want to talk to you. That was the real reason I didn't want to do that, because everybody was scared. When I told my children during the writing of the book, I felt much better. I started feeling so better that even the hospital said, that's a miracle. Because I got better, and my children got to know, and I learned something. I learned that something that was killing me was the secret I was carrying. I also, by this time, understood that all these things I was suffering about, where I don't love other people, I don't cuddle other people, was probably caused by less information or no information at all in the community. So I just thought I was contagious. I would not talk to anybody. I would not participate in schools. But like I do now with the grandson, I spend all my time, I run in the school. I'm the running grandma. So, I mean, couldn't do that because every human being, even the doctors those days when they go and see you, they put a mask on their mouth and they put glasses and they put gloves to touch me. So, I mean, if the doctor is doing that to me, how would I go to my neighbors and do that? Because it was that scary. When my children find that I had AIDS, somehow, I don't know what happened to them, but somehow I saw how they escaped. Their mother with so much information about sexuality and also behaviors in sex. Also, I understand that there are diseases that kills, maybe mine was worse, mine kills faster. But there are diseases like this, and I couldn't sit down with my children and talk to them about safe sex. I couldn't tell my children why I keep the condoms in the bathroom. We had condoms in the bathroom in our house all the time. But they didn't touch them, they thought that was crazy. I just thought they might hate that and determine that they are for us. But oh no, they didn't, because I didn't tell them why do they need condoms. I didn't tell them why they need to understand about their sexuality. I didn't talk about that something I live with can be caused in many situations. HIV is contracted on the highest level by having a sex with someone who's got it. There's also other things, factors you can get HIV virus through. But the biggest one is having sex with someone who's got it. Now, because I've got these two beautiful children, and I couldn't tell them, and I was thinking, oh my God, when my daughter gets pregnant, and she's got AIDS, she's not going to have a baby. At least I had two. So worrying about that. So I had so much worries where my whole heart, my whole being wanted to come back to life. Because I had a message. I wanted to send a message to someone. These are 20 million messages. One is in here, where I am today, being with young people, telling young people what happened to me, telling young people how beautiful life is, because that's what I've learned at the end of it. I learned about beautiful life. I learned about good relationship. I learned about having a friend, because I suffered not having friends. Now I have a lot of them. And I love that, because I call my friend and say, this is what I'm feeling like today. And they said, oh, why don't you go and see a doctor? I said, doesn't need a doctor. I'm just talking to you. Because I need a friend, not a doctor. And that, to me, I've learned that people have to understand the relationship between their lives, people at home, at school, and also being streetwise. Streetwise is when you're aware of something. And this is what we do. We are an awareness group. Before I finish talking, I'm going to ask everybody to ask me questions at the end of this. But I've got my own questions that I would like to ask you as well, because I'm supposed to be learning like you are learning, because I'm not a teacher, I'm a storyteller. And here today, I'm not doing my best storytelling. When I'm telling adults, I'm like this, and I'm going like this, and like all sorts of things to impress them. But with you guys today, I'm just calm down. So one thing I wanted also to ask in our get together today, has anyone ever met someone with AIDS? Yes? You have? You have? Has anyone, to those who have never met someone else, you probably have met someone. Have anybody seen this in your local paper? If you live in Mount Roscoe? Oh, only one person saw. This is local paper. This is my daughter and me. Last year, when we, early this year actually, when we published my book. The reason I'm showing you whether you know someone in your neighborhood. I've lived in Mount Roscoe all my life, and nobody knows that I've got AIDS. I've even put it in the newspaper, and nobody reads it. That's how silent. That's how silent it is. So we might all be having a neighbor who's got AIDS and feeling that bad. We might have someone you know who has got the virus and feeling as bad as I do just because people don't want to hear. And on the other hand is the awareness, my awareness, what I believe in. When you know something, you're not going to eat it either. So I said that fruit is not good for you, are you going to eat it? Anyone's going to eat a rotten fruit? No, no. It's the same as the virus, the awareness of the HIV virus, if we all know that there is a virus in the world just like a flu, we are aware of the people around us. Like when someone sneezes right now, we see everybody going like this, because you don't want that. But HIV virus is not like that. It has got a stigma to it that causes stress on people like me, that causes stress in a lot of parents, because in this world, including in New Zealand, we have got parents who are both HIV positive, or one has, and they don't talk about it. And the children just go, hey, I'm going to school, hey. And mom is dying. Or there's your sister who has got it in the house, and everybody's being mean. Because what happens with HIV doesn't kill us, especially today because of medicines. So we're going to live for a long time, but we are not flourishing. We don't come out and talk about it because people pretend not to know about it. But if people know about it the way we talk about any subject, it will make it easier on people like me. Before I go on my next stage, I would like to introduce my daughter. But before I introduce my daughter, I want to tell you what happened when I published my book. I published my book called SOPHIE'S World Journeys of the Lost Soul last year. I wrote it 10 years ago when I came out of the closet. When I told my daughter about my virus, which a lot of daughters runs away, and sons runs away, I've seen it. I can tell you this story they actually said, but I'm not going to talk about that today. When I told my children that I was so worried about in my life, what was going to happen to them, I got a different response. And I don't like telling that response by myself. I like them to tell that response, what they felt like. Because on my side, what I felt like was a reward, a better relationship than I ever had with my children. My daughter especially, because she's been always my friend, she took everything. She took the book and showed it to the world. I was worried about this. People start thinking she's got AIDS as well, because that's what happens. And she said, no, I'm going to have to do this. And she took the campaign to the highest level this year. She campaigned about young people, because her passion, like her mom, is young people, because young people, when it comes to your health, it's very, very important. Young people are the leaders of tomorrow. So if you guys don't take this over from us, this HIV virus, AIDS will continue happening in our society, because you don't know in your society who has got it. The more we talk about the virus, the more we are aware of it, the more we keep ourselves healthy, the more we go and get checked, and the more you'll be like me, I don't want to give it to anybody else. Why do I want to give it to anybody else? Why do I want to do that? But the good thing about it, when you know you are HIV positive, or someone who does, we don't feel shamed, and we also go on medication. And medication today stops you from being sick. So I'm going to die until I'm a real old lady, so I'm not going to die of AIDS anymore, because I was just looked after. Someone looked after me, and I didn't die during the pandemic. So the medicines we take keeps us alive. That means we've got a generation of people. But what we don't want to happen is more infectious coming on. Because when we all know, we're going to stop that. We're going to stop that by people like me coming out of the closet. We're going to stop that by people actually using condoms. We're going to stop by people going to get checked. When they get checked and they find that they're HIV positive, they get medicines and they don't get sick. And medicine reduces infections to the other person. It doesn't mean you don't use condom. It just reduces the infection from the other person. So our work, which I tend to talk more than I should be talking, my daughter looks after the side of young people, writes articles about young people. Just an example of what happened, and we are a lot of us. Anyone in this class knows how many people in New Zealand who got AIDS? Anyone's read about that? There's over 2,000 people who are living with the HIV virus in New Zealand. And most of those people live in Auckland City, because we are the biggest city. And the other reason is, it's a little bit coverage. The more people, nobody knows you. Nobody knows, you got it. So there's a lot more of people in Auckland who are HIV positive, like me, that need a support of young people to get the virus stopped. Because it doesn't get stopped, do you know why? Because we're having younger people. I dreaded the day I would meet an 18-year-old who are HIV positive. I dreaded the day. On my this last 25 years, I thought, please no. I can't see a young person copying the life I did. Then I didn't meet them. I didn't get into it. I just didn't know what to tell them. She's already 18, he's already 21, and they were HIV positive, and I'm thinking, you know what? I don't know what to tell them. Because there's no way you can tell somehow how painful it is when you've got a chronic illness, and you think that you can't get babies, or nobody likes you. Nobody likes you in general, it's worse. Being sick is not the point. Having the virus doesn't hurt me. It's when nobody supports me. Nobody doesn't talk about the disease. Nobody makes cartoons about it. I see cartoons in Simpsons. The Simpsons talks about cancer and everybody else. Nobody talks about sexual diseases in the cartoons. And I shrink when I think that young people are overly protected because they are clever than they are. You guys, you are clever than us all because you can talk about this better. You can find a way of this awareness better than I can do. So the reason of me going from one school to another is to have maybe the support from you guys. But the best support will probably be going to my daughter because she knows how to talk to young people than I do. Would you like to come to the stage, Ms. Jay?
Sure.